Welcome to What Happens Next, the channel dedicated to exploring in our 50s and 60s, and when we're considering change, the factors that we need to think about and plan and prepare for in that chapter of our lives. And I'm really pleased today to be joined by Peter, who not only has gone through his own What Happens Next moments, but now helps people navigate that change in their own lives. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here, and thanks for the invite. And yeah, really looking forward to it. I mean, the whole topic, what happens next, as you say, is kind of fundamental to what we do as well. So it's going to be interesting.
100%. Yeah. So tell us a bit about you.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I've been, I guess, in business about 40 years now. So at least the grey hairs bought and paid for on that basis. Mostly on the small business side. Several which I founded, not all of them. Some have done very well, a couple of sales. Some have gone very badly at the same time, which you often learn more from.
Sure.
And a bunch somewhere in the middle, probably, on there. So across those years, and yeah, learned an awful lot. And so beginning of this year, really, we decided to start Exitologists, sort of share that knowledge. One of the key things we sort of say is all good things come to an end, and therefore people need to plan for an exit. But I'm sure we'll come back to that. But yeah, I've been through it, the good bits, the bad bits, and the intermediate bits, really.
What would you describe as the good, the bad, and the intermediate? Well, we'll start with the bad. What were the bits that were the most challenging?
Bad. Well, it's interesting because even the bad bits sometimes turn out well. So I suppose a bad bit for me would be a business I had founded was growing very well, offices, staff, booked in our exhibitions across Europe, etc. Won't go into the detail, but we suddenly ran out of our supply. All the products we sold disappeared off the market overnight. It was sort of fairly catastrophic at that point, and tried to salvage it, failed. So I guess at that point, you're pretty much on the edge. So I was looking for some work, folding up the business, had a mortgage, car to pay. Luckily, no family at that stage. In desperation, the only job that I got offered was working on a help desk, IT help desk. But I met my wife at that company, my future business partners. So even at that low point of getting the repossession letters through, then finally getting a job, you can still see the good stuff coming out.
Yeah, I suppose it's all with hindsight, though, isn't it? I'd imagine at the time it felt like a huge challenge. I often think business owners are really good at building resilience. How have you built that sort of resilience? Is it just through bitter experience, or is it mindset? What do you think we need to do to become more resilient in our lives?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. It's a very good question. I don't think there's a simple answer. Certainly bitter experience helps. I suspect it's partly personality. Just making it up. I mean, from my personal perspective, I guess in the first 18 years of my life, I spent in Zimbabwe, quite a lot of in rural areas. So there was certainly an area and under sanctions, so there was certainly an element of make do and work out how to do things for yourself, really, with that. But that doesn't mean everyone who I knew in my childhood followed the same path. So I think that helped prepare me. But otherwise, I guess it's a mindset and, just practice most of the stuff that's forced upon you.
Really interesting. And then I suppose the other thing, and I was looking at your website, because the business you've set up is actually the partners from the previous business as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
How do you find partners that you want to continue to work with through various businesses? Because I suppose I speak to a lot of business owners, and often that small to medium-sized business often feels lonely at the top. But you just seem to have found a way to get the right partners to come along with you on that journey. Tell me a bit about that and how you worked out who was the right people for you.
Yeah, and that takes a while to work out. It's not always the way, because they weren't my first ever business partners. So the people I've never fully fallen out with a business partner, which is lucky and good. Some people have done. But to say in this case, I guess it was very unexpected meeting and then amounts of chance. So yeah, I was in the So that was at Gartner, the IT advisory people. So that was one stint of big company. But yeah, one was my line manager and his boss. We just got to know each other, worked really well together.
Yeah.
And then within about 18 months of each other, I was there for several years, within 18 months, I was made redundant and they were both made redundant, sort of about, quite a while apart. So I guess we just initially contracted, kept in touch, and increasingly just enjoyed each other's company and how we worked, and formed a job club for contracting. And then, we should formalize a consultancy. And then we got the opportunity for sort of a bigger business that we later built and sold. And we've exited, I guess it's just through that. I mean, you go through, even that business sort of ended successfully, but you still go through very bad patches, hard times. And I think just it's probably in the end, trial and error, luck, but you've got to be quite cautious who you team up with. So I don't think I'd ever go down the route. I see people do sometimes sort of advertise for a co-founder, come and join me. I couldn't do it that way,
Yeah, I mean, the challenge you've got with that is, how do you know at that point with the dynamic of the relationship is going to work medium to long term? I don't think you do, and I don't.
No.
I don't think you can, and I think often people would assume that a capital influx is what a co-founder can bring potentially.
Yeah.
But then, if the dynamic doesn't work, the money's only one factor you need to think about when it comes to all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But you mentioned about the fact that you've successfully exited, and you're now in your own what happens next journey, which means for you another business.
Yeah.
What did you learn most from the experience of exit and going into this phase of your life?
Yes, I suppose there's probably a few things that, but very briefly. One was we were quite well prepared. So we did have a strategy and at that point there were 5 of us actually, which is quite a large number. But we knew we had a plan to sell if we could. So we were quite lined up, and we were preparing for a good year, doing things. But with hindsight, I wish I had been more prepared. There's so much more we could have done.
Yeah. So you started to prepare a year before. Help me understand, with all your experience now, what time frame you'd probably look at in terms of preparing now, and what do you recommend people do in terms of preparation?
Yeah. So in the ideal, we'd say sort of 3 to 5 years on there, and the starting point. And the biggest thing we probably missed out on is where we'd say start with a personal exit strategy. So we started, as most people do, we've got a business, we want to build it, sell it, etc. But none of us really thought through what that would mean if we did several different scenarios.
Well, this is the interesting thing, and this is part of the reason we're so passionate about the work we do at What Happens Next, because actually people assume it's about the money, and it's about so much more than that. The money is a component part, right? But thinking about it in that silo, if I sell my business, I'm going to be okay financially, but not considering how you're going to spend your time, where personal identity comes from, how do I build social relationships, how do I do all of this sort of stuff is I think under-discussed. What do you think?
So you think under?
I think it isn't discussed enough. We've got such a... I think there's and again, this is just my theory, I might be entirely wrong on this. I think the reason the money and the business side, the sale of the business side, is discussed a lot more prominently is because it's tangible, isn't it? It's something that you can actually do about it. And I suppose the element of purpose, meaning, and well-being feel quite ephemeral, but you can plan and prepare for them, can't you? So
that's right,
tell me, if you exited your business again, apart from preparing earlier, what would you do differently?
Yeah, so apart from preparing earlier, which would cover the due diligence challenge, which is another really big one, I think would be because each of the five of us probably had a slightly different outlook on what that exit would mean. So I think we would have gone into the negotiation prepared, sort of with five different. We probably assumed we were five people in two buckets. We were actually five people in five buckets.
And tell me a little bit about how those buckets differed for you.
Yeah, so in that case, for example, there are five of us, and we said sort of two of the younger founders, and they were probably more valuable to the business. They wanted the business. We had about 50 staff, big customers. So there's plenty with the business, not just the founders, but they were keen to sort of hang on to two of the people. Then, so they made the offer, and we were looking to sort of move on as the five. But having joined them, then two of us, one of the founders, then decided, 6 months or thereabouts, I'm off. That's enough. And then Chris and I thought, actually, there's some interesting opportunities here still. This could be quite interesting. Let's stay on. So, we sort of reorganized that, and we did stay on, and we've obviously now left. But I think you're having that clear picture up front of the next steps. So what would you want would then influence what we discussed with them, would probably influence what we agreed. Would it have majorly changed anything? Maybe not in our case, but I think going in with your eyes open is crucial on that.
I mean, I suppose the interesting thing for me in that regard is that element of factor, and it's a conversation I have with clients all the time, factoring in the reality that you might have to stay in the business post-sale, and that's part of the conversation you've got to have when you're thinking about the next chapter. Talk to me in your experience about how that conversation went with the purchasers of your business and how you navigate that.
Yeah, which the second stage or the initial conversation?
Both, really.
Both, yeah. So relatively straightforward. So I think on there, we then agreed. So they said, fine. So take two people on. Well, all the staff move over. Yeah. And of the five founders, directors. So two will go on to permanent contracts, and three will go on to 6-month contract. Temporary contract, with a view to. We're quite lucky in that particular deal. There were no sort of onerous restrictions of what we had to do, other than hand over the business and look after a couple of key clients that we had on there, and keep them sweet and make sure all of that happened. But at that stage, it was relatively straightforward. And the good thing we have done, and we've carried forward into our planning, is we've done quite a lot of, I call, dating with this acquirer. So we already knew each other well. We'd worked together and things like that. So, the conversations were relatively straightforward on that basis, because we knew each other well, albeit not the people negotiating, but we were known quantities to each other and things like that.
And did you do a beauty parade? Did you look at a number of acquirers? How did you compare and contrast, and what was that process? Or was it literally just that one?
It was just literally that one, really. So they knocked on the door a couple. So we worked together quite a lot, as I mentioned, and they did actually ask the question a while back. In fact, we're probably, having said that, we might well have been preparing for a couple of years, not 1 year, but putting that aside, would we be prepared to sell? And we said yes. And we had sort of a rough figure in mind that would get this conversation going. They said, no, not it. Okay, good to know, but not right now. And then we started doing very well, winning very big contracts. And there were some other market factors that were starting to worry us as well. And then they sort of knocked on the door and said, okay,
actually now
is the time. And we had some sort of market headwinds coming our way. So we thought, actually, now could be a good time for us as well. So we didn't then. At that point, you don't really have the time at that. You can't really. You either have to say yes or no. And we thought at that point we sort of gave them a number, and they're now prepared to meet the number. And that's potentially something we would be maybe a bit more coy about, as to that, because you can't suddenly then go back and renegotiate that hard. You can, because your size is there, but you sort of painted yourself into a certain corner. So that would be another.
Yeah, well, it's a point of reference, isn't it? Sometimes if the business has changed, you don't want to have the same point of reference. But interesting one. Yeah. Now, I know that recently you've written about 5 pillars of personal exit. Talk me through those 5 pillars and help me understand a little bit about what they are and how people can practically prepare for them.
Yeah. So on the personal side, we think about sort of the key areas. The first to think about is sort of personal clarity, motivation. So what is it you want? What motivates you? And you're thinking really about not what motivates you to get out of bed now, but what motivates you generally in the future, whether it's your future self or it could be a prior version of yourself, things you used to love doing but you don't have time for or money for, etc. So yeah, just think about what you really want to do once this is all over, which could be start all over again and do it multiple times, or retire, take up gardening, whatever it is, and make sure you're clear and also everyone else is clear. So I mean, an interesting tale from somebody else I know who built his business, sold it for a significant sum. Kids had left home, and so sat down with the wife. Fantastic news! We made the sale. Let's go to the Caribbean. And his wife was, but I like it here in Milton Keynes. And nothing against Milton Keynes per se, but yeah, in the end they divorced, and there's clearly more to it than just the sale. But it was kind of a shock to him, and probably to both of them, that's what they wanted. So that's one part. Then emotional and legacy readiness. So what does it mean to you, when you're no longer a founder, owner, and what's left behind?
What am I if I've got that, right?
Exactly, yeah, if I haven't got that. And yeah, precisely. And what are you leaving behind to your staff, to your family, to whoever else? Then the financial, those are sort of the fundamentals to us. And then you're starting to look at the financial planning expectations, bang into your sweet spot there. What do you need? What do you want?
How much is enough?
Look like, etc. And then you're kind of, you've got the building blocks and the foundations in place. And then the final two really are sort of preparing for post-exit. So we say, often the planning, and I guess ours was exactly that way. You get to you've planned towards signing the check and the contract, and that's it. You just whoa. So you have a plan. And then the final of the 5 is what we call the strategy alignment, which is really about now you've got the personal strategy, create a business strategy that aligns aligns with your financial needs, your legacy needs, because people often set up the wrong sort of business to meet those, particularly those sort of legacy and emotional things, as much as the financial. So we'd sort of go through that, and that's at a high level, and then that's sort of to be revisited. Certainly, if you do start 5 years in advance, then things do change. Your potential valuation might change. Your attitudes might change. So definitely keep an eye on it and revisit it. But that's the the basis.
I think that the point you made is, and we said it's quite a bit. The point you made that was really interesting is the impact on your family of you making that decision as well. So, I mean, it's different for Gazzy and I because we're both in the business, but the amount of time, and we talk about, even though we're a million miles away from exit at the moment, we think 10 to 12 years before we need to do anything like that. Actually, the conversation about how we're going to spend that time together when the dynamic's different, we're starting to have now. And the reason is because we've seen the dynamic. I mean, one example is a guy who we work with, really lovely guy, and he retired, stopped work. He didn't sell his business, but he was he was in corporate life for a number of years. And when we first spoke to him about what happens next, Peter, he said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend loads of time with my wife and loads of time on the golf course, right? But whilst he'd been building his career, his wife had had this whole independent life that she actually didn't want to change that much. And it was what he'd done is had that perception in his head of what life was going to look like without having a conversation.
Exactly.
How do we get better at that? How do we get better at aligning those two things? Is it just start preparing early and have better conversations, do you think?
Yeah, I think having it early, and I think that's what we like to say we add as a company, is that independent third party. It's sort of someone else to blame almost. So rather than having to have that one-to-one, let me ask you what you want, darling, etc. It's sort of, that annoying guy, Peter's given me this questionnaire, and says, we should sit down and discuss it together, or we'd often say, actually, why don't you all jump on the call? Bring your if it's a family business, I want to talk to all of you. And so it's almost like, rather than just being that sort of, sometimes what I call shoulder to shoulder rather than toe to toe. We're just having a face to face conversation, looking at each other. Whereas you've got that piece of paper and we're both sitting side by side and going, "Oh, hadn't thought about that. What do you think about that?" And it sort of depersonalizes it.
It's the trigger, but in a abstract way, so that somebody else is asking. It doesn't feel, but it does get you thinking about some of those questions, which is really important. What part of the pillar do you think the 5 things people struggle with the most?
It's one of the first 2. I think it does depend slightly, but the personal motivation, not so much the clarity, that's the process brings that, but the personal motivation. And probably struggling to do that, because I think that we can clarify more in advance, as you say, talking about the golf, and I want to spend more time playing golf, and just walk that through, and day to day, week by week, how many times do you go down to the club? Who do you know? We can work that through.
It was interesting for Paul, who's the guy I was talking about, because for him, he realised that golf as a hobby was brilliant. Golf as a job, where he was spending every day there, wasn't something he wanted to do. And I suppose the interesting thing, and I'm thinking about Paul in this regard, is he only realised it when he tried it. How do we plan and prepare when we're still in that life, when we might not know how we feel in the new life? Or is it it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you're planning and preparing for all this time in a period of time which is super busy, and you're not doing that.
You're not doing
that. How do we get better at just prototyping the life we're going to have, do you think?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think there are a couple of approaches. One, as you say, the ideal, it doesn't always work, but is to, can you sort of prototype that a wee bit? And in fact, you can sometimes put 2 things together, because one of the key pillars on business value is, can it work without you? Fully dependent. So a prototype on the golf might be, okay, what I want you to do is switch off all devices, all the business, but spend a week just playing golf. And so, I mean, it may be, the danger is it might be exciting enough for the first week. It's only week 5, you get bored, but say, okay, and this is what you said, all you're going to do is play golf. Ignore, switch off all devices, so you've got no buzz from the business. Whatever else.
It's running independently of you.
It's running independently of you. And if that fails because the business collapses.
If this is the first time you've listened to What Happens Next, welcome to the show. We are committed to making sure that we do as much as we can to help you navigate whatever's next in your life. And there's a home for What Happens Next. What Happens Next.life. We'd love for you to visit the site. On it, you will see loads of interviews, a link to take the What Happens Next quiz, an opportunity to sign up to the waiting list for the book, and much, much more. Take a look on the visit site, and we'd love to know what you think.
Around your feet, and you can only get to day 2 of the golf, or hole number 9. Well, that's a separate problem. We can tackle that, and let's retry the prototype later. So that's clearly one thing, is give it a try. But the other one, I think, is just trying to dig deeper, think of scenarios, but really just say, what if? Just imagine, what if you hate it? And talk about bringing people who've had that experience. They thought they loved it, they hate it. What would you do? What's plan B if you discover you hate it?
True. What's plan B is a great question. I think the interesting thing, the first way of prototyping it is really aligns with something we talk a lot about on What Happens Next, which is rapid, low-cost experimentation. If you do it for a week and you're in a position where you work out that actually you'd like to do it more, great. But if you don't, you're still in a position where you've learned something, right? As you said, often the biggest learns come out of failure as opposed to success. And if the business needs you and you didn't realise, or you're in a position where you actually don't enjoy the thing you're doing as much, doing it as intensely, then actually you can make changes. It's interesting.
I think, just
I know,
try that.
I know you talk and you've written previously about the silver tsunami, which is a phrase I love, by the way.
Yeah.
Tell me what that is and why you believe there's so many businesses that aren't prepared for it.
Yeah, so there's two factors in that. One, the silver tsunami, the direct one, is sort of refers to the baby boomers, so people, 1946 to 1964. Certainly in the US, I don't have clear data in the UK, but imagine similar, that surveys suggest about 50% of small businesses are owned by people born in that age. But of course, I'm just on the edge. I'm 61, born in 64, so these people are in their 60s or older, 60s to 80s, and it's time to start moving on. So hence the silver tsunami there's a huge wave of businesses. And actually, other data shows 40% of business exit triggered by life things, health, whatever else. So never mind the fact you might want to exit. In your 60 plus years, health might trigger that exit. So it's just looking at that sheer number of businesses looking to exit fairly soon. And the raw data suggests, again, quickly on 50%. So, yeah, go on.
Sorry. What do you think that how does that impact value? Because I think of that and go, if there's more businesses with a desire and requirement to exit, and particularly if it's health related, need to do it sooner rather than later, that number that you aspire to achieve to sell your business is under threat, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at classic supply and demand, that number of businesses lurking, you're no longer a rare thing, probably. So that is the risk. So our counter to that is you just need to be better prepared than those around you. Can you prove the value? Wise, you might be the only game in town now, but a few years down the road, you might be one of several businesses. So you just want to be the better prepared one. That's the independent one. You've got all the data, everything around you. And the second angle is you might have to think about a more of a staged exit, which some people want anyway. That it might be you can't just hand over the keys, cash the check, and walk away. You might have to sort of work a few more years, transition out slowly to get the value out of it.
But that alludes to the same point that you make. The earlier you prepare, the better it's going to be, right? That element of saying we're not putting it, even though it feels like a long time away, 10, 7, 5 years, actually, the earlier you start to plan and prepare, all you're doing is increasing your chances of success, right?
Well, exactly.
That's what you're doing. It's really interesting. Help me understand a little bit about, because one of the things that I'm really curious about is that element of when you were exploring options to exit, and I know you sold it to a larger business, but one of the things that I'm curious about is, did you ever consider management buyout? Did you ever consider EOT, employee-owned trust? Okay. What were the other options that you looked at, or was a trade sale, for want of a better phrase, exit always the way that you wanted to go, and why?
Yeah. So the ideal was the trade sale for sort of the clean exit, and I guess also at the time we're thinking we probably start again, which is one of the other things that hasn't happened. But I think the other things we knew in the back of our mind, if that didn't, in fact, no, I say we had discussed it briefly as well, was those other options would be there. We weren't ready to think of those yet, because actually our business didn't fully run without us, but we were at 50 people. We were mostly sort of fee earners, but we were bringing in that management layer. I think, sort of growing it further. If we got to the 75, 100 people mark, and I think, the management buyout, EOT, if the trade sale, if we couldn't find the buyer, so our next step probably would have been to look for a buyer. If that hadn't worked, because actually most companies who try to sell don't. It's the harsh reality. So then I think it would have been, then think, how about pass it on to the next generation of our people. None of us had children interested, but certainly some of the sort of the managers we had taken on, I think they would have been interested. looking back, had that been the option. Yeah.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you look at the options you've got, and actually planning and preparing for an MBO is different to planning and preparing for a trade sale. In terms of the actions you might want to take. And it's a earlier preparation process, because who's going to be ready and able and willing to own the business in a few years? It's an interesting one. When you think about, so we've talked about the 5 personal pillars of exit. When, in your experience, business owners think about getting their business ready for exit and sale, what element do they not practically prepare for enough?
Yeah, I think mostly it's not thinking wide enough on there. So we have an approach we call the Dirty Dozen, which is 12 things that matter most.
So tell me about those 12 things.
So there are 12 things. So it looks across different factors of the business, and some of them are sort of complete showstoppers that could kill the deal, and sort of security, particularly cybersecurity, health and safety, are those things. But you're not going to make yourself hugely valuable by making them better, but you're going to make yourself very undesirable if you get them wrong. So you've got to get those fundamentally right. Then we normally work through part of ourselves will be then sort of work with you to audit your business and where's your next weak spot. And the classic one is often customer concentration. You depend too much on one or a few customers, and that's particularly risk on a sale and so on, or even a transition, a succession. If those people just like you, that's a risk that they move on. So that's often a classic one. Some of them are just basic controls, sort of financial controls, demonstrating that. And again, when somebody comes knocking, if you can demonstrate all of that, the drop of a hat, who your top customers are, what your cash flow is, and those sorts of things, you're going to be people be more impressed than a business making it up as they go along. So financial controls, cash flow, profitability, strategic growth plan. Do you have a credible growth strategy? Did you just get lucky, or was it planned? Yes, we just work through people, and it's almost like a sort of a light beam. Okay, this quarter we're going to latch onto that one.
Gotcha.
Customer concentration. Have we done enough? Not yet. Okay, another quarter of action. Have we done enough? Yes. Okay, what's the next thing to fix?
And in terms of the Dirty Dozen, are you first of all fixing the ones that are going to be the game changers? So I'm thinking about, is there a foundation? Is it health and safety and compliance, or whatever it may be, just to make sure we've got that foundation right? Because as you said, you could have a really good growth strategy, and you could have a really good control your numbers, but if you're not getting those foundations right, it might be a deal breaker. So when somebody's thinking about it, where would you start?
Yeah, typically you're bang on with that. So typically those two, because actually they can cause you huge problems even right now.
Yeah,
if you get hacked. Right now you could close a business. You have a major health and safety incident, and it does apply to everybody. I mean, it doesn't, obviously, if you're in particular industries where it's important, that's crucial to fix. But then again, those people often have a closer eye on it, whereas people, maybe if you're office-based or home-based, you haven't thought about that. But actually, coming up with, which you can land up with heavy fines, or, but if you're a founder, I mean, things like health and safety executive can launch corporate manslaughter charges against you if the worst thing happens in your company. It could be to your subcontractors. People often don't realize it applies to my subcontractors and everybody, really. So I think, they could kill your business right now, and they could kill your deal later. So definitely look at them first.
100%. So health and safety is a foundation. What was the other one?
And the security, particularly cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're computer-based, as most people are, but is your customer data at risk? Is your everything else on there?
Have you done the work on that? That's really important.
Yeah.
And then what are the areas that people often neglect when it comes to practically preparing for their business? So we've got that Dirty Dozen. What's the bit, in your experience, when you're working with businesses, is the one that most people often turn around and go, I didn't realise that was fundamentally important?
Yeah, so I think it varies really with the different areas on there. Who who is on there. Because I mean, yeah, sort of even as groups, just the manage. Some people are, good at managing the finance. Some people aren't good at that. Do you have your strategies, your growth strategies, your leadership team? Are you aligned on those? Yeah. What about intellectual property? Again, some businesses don't really rely much on intellectual property, so it's not a big deal for other people. That can be a big deal if they're not properly protected or kept an eye on it. And that could also have a big planning effect, because if you are very much based on patents and things like that, then that can be a huge investment to build your business. So that can be a real balancing act. So I'd say on that dirty dozen, there's no real front runner on that.
Yeah. Talk to me about due diligence. So when you sold your business, because it's interesting. We helped a client of ours recently go through the due diligence process because we were responsible for managing their workplace pensions and doing the automatic enrollment compliance. So when the lawyer was doing the due diligence process during the sale, we were getting involved and uploading data to the hub and making sure that they do it. Do you think people underestimate due diligence? And what can we do? I look at it and go, is there something we can do before we decide to sell, in preparation for that exit, whatever it may be, to better plan and prepare? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's going to be a punch in the face. Is it Muhammad Ali sort of said, whoever, everyone has a plan until the first punch? Mike Tyson, thank you. Yes, good correction there. Yeah, and due diligence is like that. And I think we'd thought about it, but yeah, it was like a very hard punch when it lands. Just the amount of information they want. And also the terminology. So I think, again, a bit like sort of we talked about the golfing prototype, and say one of the things we do offer and recommend is do some dry runs of those and start preparing it. So maybe set up even if it's in your Google Drive, set up a data room and
100%.
And just upload your stuff. And could you do that? And can you upload it? And can you answer these questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. So I've got a friend of mine who exited his financial planning business, and now he runs a business specifically helping financial planners exit.
Okay.
And he wrote a book recently that was really insightful for me personally, but also I find myself talking about quite a lot on the channel, called Everybody Exits. And his philosophy is, you are going to exit your business at some point. You're either going to go out in a box, or you can actually or you're going to get ill and you're going to have to exit. But if you plan and better prepare for that exit, you're going to be in a good place. And it's really interesting. That data room element is something that we think about quite a lot, because what we do for our clients at Savello is we have a personal data room. So we have a secure digital hub where we encourage clients to upload their wills, their powers of attorney, so that we can better support their family if anything happens to them. And it's really interesting, because one of the philosophies we talk about a lot is, I'm a natural optimist, Peter, so I find myself having to train myself to think this way, but it's plan for the best. What's the outcome you want, and what's the incremental steps you can get there, but also prepare for the worst. What can you do to make sure that you're in a position where if it all goes wrong, you're ready? And I think looking at those two plans, it all goes well or it doesn't, then allows you to prepare better. But the starting point to all of this, both in your world and in mine, is clarity. And I know that you talk about the 6 steps to exit clarity. Tell me a bit about that, and what are those 6 incremental steps?
Yeah, so the steps there are really taking through, in fact, the end-to-end process on there. So you get clarity by understanding everything end-to-end, which is further to the left and further to the right than most people think, I'd say. So we already talked briefly about the personal exit strategy. So plan your personal exit, plan your business exit.
So that's step one is personal exit.
Personal, yeah. So step two is the business, and then get those nicely aligned. And then step three is the value creation. So there's often the long bit in the middle. If you're properly prepared, that's the long bit in the middle where you build a business in a way that is going to fulfill your financial and personal dreams, ambitions, etc. Then you're on to exit preparation. So you're really thinking about just focused on your business, but you might be dating potential acquirers. Then it's exit preparation and taking the time. And again, that could be when we're starting to think about due diligence, dry runs, starting to hunt for acquirers, those kind of things, but you're getting lined up. Then there's the exit management. So you get lucky, things work out well. You're then in a process, which even that can be quite lengthy, but a bit sorry or whirlwind like the due diligence. And then there's a post-exit management. So that's sort of the first 5 take you to the exit. Again, people often stop there and think I'll work it out when I get there, but it's actually having a plan for what you do, and in some cases what you don't do. If you do exit for a large amount of money, we recommend actually don't do too much. Don't go away and buy the house and taking check in for the 12-month world tour just yet. Take 6 months off. Take it easy, sort of thing. Yeah. But so it's that end-to-end journey really, from the early personal plan to realizing that personal plan is the final stage.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that element of decompression, isn't it? Because we'd start to work with a client who literally sold their business this year and just said, right, we're off to Mexico for 6 weeks because we need to decompress from, and we've spoken about this already, haven't we? That element of intensity that goes through a business sale process, the amount of stress and the amount of effort it takes to get to that stage, actually turning around and going, I'm not going to do much for a while because I need to think about what that next chapter is going to be. Is for many people a sensible option. So we've talked about why you went for that trade sale and why for you that was the right thing to do. If you're a founder and you're going, I've got a bunch of ways that I might want to consider exiting, but I'm not sure on the right route.
Yeah.
How do we work out as founders the best route for us to take for our own exit? Be it employee ownership trust, MBO, sale to a competitor or a trade sale, or any other option. How do we work out what's the best route for us?
Yeah, so a few angles. And again, you've got to start with that personal strategy. So if legacy is important to you, some of them sort of steer in a direction. So if you really, one extreme example, but one clear example is if you want to pass it on through the family to the next generation. Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of work to make sure they want it, or have a caretaker between the generations, but that sort of drives in that direction. But I think in the middle ground, if you're, think about scenarios like, you've built up your business, you've got staff, and we had to take ourselves through. We've got 50 staff now, and they don't necessarily know. You're not allowed to tell them you're going through a process. They don't necessarily know we're going to sell. What to do? What will happen? They will probably be looked after, but they may all be laid off. How much does that matter to you if it's not done your way anymore? Does it matter what you've done? Your relationships don't matter. And sometimes people say, if the customers only want to deal with me, then may not be true. But what about your customers? Will you feel you've let them down? Will your staff? Some will resign, almost undoubtedly. Some might be made redundant, almost undoubtedly. How much does that bother you? If it bothers you an awful lot, then
there might be a different route to say.
Yeah, different route. Then you don't sell. If you actually say, we'll do our best to protect them through the negotiation, but actually, they can look after themselves, then a trade sale would work. And then you've got to think about, do you have a sellable business? What would people be buying? What could you sell? Is it a team of people? Is it a product? And again, they're clear, if you're in a product space, it's a lot easier to decide. If you're in a service space, it's not so easy to decide on there. But just think, what is it saleable? Why would people want to buy your business? And how much value could you get from it? And can you think of a buyer? Another key question often is, who might buy your business? If the answer is I've no idea, then that doesn't sound too promising.
No.
But if you've got some ideas, even if they're wrong ideas, but you think, I want to sell. Like I'm working with somebody who said they've got a clear plan and we want to sell to IBM.
Yeah.
They're building their business and they are strongly courting IBM because the plan is to sell to them, and that's sort of your clearest option. But another company might have a wellness app I'm talking to in there, but fitness app, and so clearly some of the big gym businesses could be interested. So
sure.
If you can start flagging potential customers, and a part of the process we go through, well, you could do it yourself. Go and talk to them. Don't say, will you buy me? But say, hey, I'd like to work with you. Do you fancy a partnership? Could we work together? I think we've got a good synergy. If they all say get lost, then don't. But if they think there's some, that's sort of what we call the dating phase. If you can work together and make some money together, then you'll start to work out.
Start those partnerships early and collaborate is a really interesting way to find the business that might eventually buy you, right? That's something that I've not really thought about. So it's an interesting one, that one. Peter, I love a good story, and I think stories often best describes the work that we do. Tell me a little bit about the story that best describes the work that the exitologists do, and how it helped that particular individual founder.
Oh, yeah. So I think the multifaceted one is on there. We're not at the end. It's a long-term business, as I'll briefly explain. So the exit's a long way off, but that's an interesting one because it fits quite nicely. And this particular business is actually based in Tunisia in North Africa. University spin-off, but they've got a whole bunch of really high-tech stuff that some cynics around the world might say, surely that happens in UK and the USA, sort of nanotechnology and high-tech stuff. So it's been great. In fact, one of the first people we started working with, and it's been great to help them set up. And this is the sort of the large end of the offer, so to speak. So getting them working on them, getting visas to get some of their staff over here, set up a UK office, working on their patents they've patented, and getting patent applications, a patent strategy for around the world, and they're expanding into Saudi Arabia and other places, which is interesting dealing with them. But it's all around at that point, that strategy, and they do want to build and make a trade sale, probably to a chemicals company. So they've got that plan. They've had the conversations with the founders. But yes, it covers all the sort of those strategies, those locations, an international flavour, and growth for them.
What's interesting about that story is they've planned for exit right at the start.
Yeah. So, and
in my experience, a lot of business owners don't do that. They either fall into business or they. Would you suggest, regardless of how long somebody's got to exit, they should start thinking about exit immediately?
Yeah, I think so. It's never too early. And another key reason, and which also interestingly applies to these spin-offs, is in most cases, if you thinking about it before you even start the business, you might be jumping from a job. Are you moving from a corporate career into this? Are you moving from a university into a startup business? So I think even that's driving a decision. You might regret that decision very early. Never mind exit, you might leap out of what you've done. And as we said right at the outset, it's a tough job. You need a lot of resilience, and you might hate it. So I think think about the exit first, and then it's never too early to start, we say.
Yeah, interesting. The other thing that I'm really curious about is the role that work plays in your life when you're thinking about what happens next chapter. Because I've got clients who exit and leave corporate jobs and find that they miss work. They miss what they love. So tell me a little bit about your experience of your own what happens next, and what made you actually turn around and go, I'm going to start again. What drives you to do that?
to keep on going, yeah. So it's just it's fun, really. I suppose don't say that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life or whatever. And I think so. Where part of Exitologist probably was that would be a fun thing to do. So do I want to build another business, employ staff, make it large, and sell it again? You think, actually, I'm not sure that at this stage in my life does that look like fun?
Yeah,
I'm not sure it might do, but actually, sort of sharing that knowledge, and it's sort of slightly off to the one side. But I think, I don't play golf. Well, I'll probably be rubbish at it. My grandmother's fantastic at golf, so I don't try and keep up with her. But the other things, just taking it easy like that, don't really appeal.
Yeah.
At some point that might change, but it's just fun. So I think,
Well, I think that fundamental question, what looks like fun to me, is a really important one. Because I think it's different for us all. But starting with the point of how would I like to spend my time and what do I enjoy the most about what I'm doing currently, then gives you real insights into what you want to do next.
Yeah.
Peter, I've loved our conversation, and thank you so much for sharing your insights. Where can people find out a bit more about you?
Yeah, so I guess our website, exitologist.com, the best starting point, and there's information about us on there, but also plenty of links on there to contact us, book a video call, just get in touch and have a chat. As I say, to me this is all good fun, and nothing beats having a good chat about somebody's business and what they're up to. If we can help, brilliant. If not, then it'll be a great chat.
Brilliant. Yeah, fabulous. Thank you so much. And I hope, particularly if you own and run a business, this has really made you think about what exit looks like for you, regardless of whether it's next year, and I hope it's not, because I hope you're planning and preparing a bit earlier than that, or in 10 to 15 years' time. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter. Hopefully that was useful for you watching at home, and we'll just see you next time on What Happens Next. Part of the issue we've got when we're thinking about what happens next in our lives is having the self-awareness, having the introspection to be able to think about what the gaps in our well-being are. And we're doing loads of work at the minute with What Happens Next to build solutions that are going to help you think about well-being in a nuanced way when you're thinking about how it applies to your life. One of the first things we've built that you can use today is our What Happens Next quiz. It's free to do, takes about 5 minutes, but what it will do is give you an insight into the areas of strengths when it comes to your well-being and the areas you might want to improve. You can take the What Happens Next quiz at whathappensnext.life/quiz, and I hope it helps you in your journey to work out what happens next for you.